Welcome back again. Here we are with another regional preview for 2024 for Division One NCAA, and this will be the women's preview, as the women's preliminary, or I will say first round for the regional competition begins today. We had some pretty interesting performances yesterday, some surprises specifically in the pole vault, but we'll talk more about that in our recap either tomorrow or this coming Monday. But let's get into our women's preview, which is, of course, like the men, loaded field. But I feel one side of the country is leaning more heavily within the top ranks than the other side. And I think that's the East versus West. And if it comes off as East Coast bias, I apologize, but it's really not. Just comparing the marks, the depth in the East is more palpable. It's incredible. Um, Exciting because this is a really good year, I think, for track and field. It looks as if this is going to be one incredible Olympic Games. And the funny thing is that the conversation that we're hearing on the professional ranks is, oh my God, that they're starting off slow. And, you know, I, it's funny because I remember a similar conversation in 2021. We were complaining, oh my God, things are starting off slow. And by the time the Olympic trials rolled around, the Olympics, it was no longer slow. And I expect much of the same. But even still, the collegiate athletes have really kind of led the rankings, and even in some cases, a young, talented high schooler. But we'll get things started with the women's sprints and hurdles. And, I think perhaps the most intriguing story is, you know, is really sort of an East versus West battle. On the East, in the 100 hurdles, you have Grace Stark, and you have all the LSU hurlers, Leah Armstrong, Leah Phillips. And in the West, you kind of just have Jasmine Jones and Maribel of Washington State, Jones of USC, who defeated Stark indoors, but has been, moving a little bit slow. Her start to the season was delayed, but I think the Pac 12 championships gave us insight to how talented and how good Jasmine Jones is. This woman ran 53.98 in the 400 hurdles, so she has that 53 speed over high hurdles. And this is, after having her season started sort of at the end of April, um, early May, when everyone else was starting late March, early April. So she was about a month behind, and she's already number one in the country in one event and a threat in the other because she ran a 12.81 to a negative headwind. So it'll be interesting to see what happens this regional weekend. I'm expecting to see both of those ladies qualify out of their regions. Pretty solid times. Grace is only planning to run the 100 hurdles in the 100, which I think is smart. She is a great 100-meter runner, but with her history of injuries, let's make sure we focus on what is her strongest event, and that is clearly the hurdles. And then we move to the 100, and then you have, Jason Sears. What type of shape is she going to be in? We saw that video that did its rounds on social media. And we can't ignore her 10.77 because it's still the world lead. But she came up lame, and she clearly looked like she was, seriously injured. My hope is that she's not. I'm actually a little concerned for her Olympic hopes. Like, oh my God, why is she running this weekend? Maybe it's not as serious. Maybe it was just a cramp or the injury is minor and she can kind of run on it. She is only running the 100. She's not running or not competing in the 200 from the last time I saw the list. And you'll be able to see in a few screenshots that I took here of those lists. I did not see her listed. But, again, I just think she is an incredibly talented sprinter. And I was really, really disappointed when I did, because it looked like she was going to win the SEC. It really did. She had got out on Brianna Liston of LSU and looked like she wasn't letting up. She's getting ready to press. Maybe she pressed a little too hard, and that caused the injury. But I, you know, I really hope that she's all right, because we also have Kayla Jackson in Georgia, and that's just the East. And I think on the West, it's pretty much, the big name of note is Jaden Mays. The West doesn't have anybody that's under 11 seconds, whereas the East has six competitors under 11. And then the seventh, which is Centuria James of South Carolina, runs 11:01. So it's clear in the 100 that the getting out of the East is going to be a little bit more of a challenge. You think in the 200 again, it's Mackenzie Long, and until she's dethroned by anyone, I think Mackenzie Long has kind of solidified herself as the favorite, especially winning that SEC championship. And the time was 22:03, and it was win legal. You can't ignore a time like that. She is number one in the world right now, and barely over the outstanding run from Sydney McLaughlin. In the 400, I think it's the Arkansas runners, and I think it's led by Nikisha Price. I don't think we can ignore Anning. I don't think Kaylin Brown, a freshman, I'm not sure if she has more in the tank to improve upon. I think Anning does. I think Kaylin Brown having an incredible freshman year, breaking the American junior record. I think she may have peaked, maybe. I mean, it is an Olympic year, and everyone seems to always do on all world performances during an Olympic year. But I really, really, really do think that it's Nikisha Price at this point, and I'm curious to see what she does. This is a qualifying meet. She doesn't have to be all world. She just doesn't do enough to get by. But I think she's going to also want to test where she's at. How easily can she run a 50 point? Which we saw at the SEC championships is a little bit easy for her because she was able to run 49 seconds in 2 rounds, which bodes well for her making Team Jamaica. She looks like she may even be ready to break the Jamaican national record. And also in the 400 hurdles, there's also Rachel Glenn of Arkansas, but we can't forget the defending champion Savannah Sutherland out of Michigan. Michigan always seems to have competent, quality hurdlers. They really kind of seem to be the Illinois now, the Illinois of the '90s. They are that now, and I also think that's Ohio State as well. But I think it's pretty clear with the top two hurdlers, the top 100 hurdler and the top 400 hurdler, that the program really is Michigan. And then moving to our second leg, we'll look at the distance events. And, we can't ignore Maya Ramsden of Harvard. Unfortunately, with her being at Harvard, she's kind of pushed aside almost because she's not at one of the major conferences. And she's not breaking NCAA records like Parker Valby, who we have to make note of. She is attempting that 5K, 10K double. My God. But Maya Ramsden is really a phenomenal 1500 runner, phenomenal miler. I saw her at the Penn Relays, and she ran an incredible anchor leg for Harvard and the DMR, and they have finally won a pinwheel since the 30s. We're talking almost a century. So that's a very talented young woman. I think Maya Ramsden is in great condition to defend her title. I think perhaps the more shocking thing for me, though, and I did just mention it, is that Parker Valby is attempting the 5K, 10K double. And part of me is going, no, no, what are you doing? That's too much. That's too hard. But it's Parker, and she always seems to find a way to just mosey along as a champion. Like, she just doesn't seem to be really phased. And I think, even though she's going to have to go up against Hilda Olamomoy of Alabama, again, this is just a qualifying meet. She's not really running to be the champion because there is no regional champion. She's simply running to just get to the next round. And I think that she'll do that in both. But my concern really is that the NCAA championships. And then we look in the West in the distance, and you have Chloe Forrester in the mile for Washington. The 5K, you have the two Oregon runners, Maddie Elmore and Selena Ayadils. And I think another name we can't ignore from Oklahoma State is Taylor Rowe in the 5K. And in the 10K, Arkansas still proving that they're a very strong distance program. The top entrant is Sydney Thorfinson of Arkansas, 32, 36, 47 in the 10K. And they are proving and rounding into shape at the right time that they are just a well-oiled machine. They are able to cover so many layers of the track. I think the only thing missing from their sprint core this year are their short sprinters. They have hurdlers, excuse me. They have 400 runners. Rachel Glenn really leading the way in the high jump. We'll talk about that later. This Arkansas team is really strong. And another key name we can't forget is a former champion. It's Olivia Howe, who's now at Texas. It seems that since Illinois, things have not gone as smooth as we would like, or as she would like. But I think Olivia Howe is a name we can't ignore. And focusing on the 800, outside on the east of Michaela Rose being under 2 minutes, you also have Sanu Jallo of Arkansas. And then, the name that I looked on the list several times because I didn't see her And then I realized, oh, she is there. She's just at a 201. She's not at the 159 she ran indoors. So Juliet Whitaker is still in the race of the 800 out west. Her teammate Royce and Willis, again, the Stanford ladies are only looking to qualify, but I think they may want to make a statement here because Sanu Jallo, 159.29, literally looked phenomenal, pushing Rose to that 158 mark to even win the SEC. Would have thought SEC, the premier conference for distance events. And then moving to our third leg, we'll look at the field events and, Ole Miss in the shot and in the discus. Ole Miss really just loaded with their throws. Jelani Davis, Jasmine Mitchell, what a great group. But we can't ignore Maya Lesner in the shot, Jada Ross in the shot, who is the NCAA record holder, by the way. Let's not forget her. Um, and Jada Ross is also going to compete in the discus. And it's funny because we're mentioning these schools, and there's a throwing power that we've not said at all this season, men or women, and that's Arizona State. Normally, I would feel like Jada Ross would be an Arizona State thrower, being from the West Coast, but she's at Oregon, and Oregon has really done a phenomenal job of developing their throwing program. And you're sitting there left wondering, what happened to Arizona State? Are they going to get back to that level? I'm sure they will. It'll just take, a couple of recruits. But, it really feels as if Oregon and Ole Miss and Colorado State, Maya Lesner, those are some programs that are really on the rise because in the shot put, it's not just Maya Lesner listed. You also have Gabby Morris of Colorado State, and we've mentioned her before indoors. So they have a pretty strong 1-2 punch in the shot. And then in the discus, they have Michaela Hawkins, who's coming in at number 2 in the West. So those are some big storylines within the throwing events. But in the jumps, it's kind of an open field. I don't really feel outside of the pole vault. I don't really feel anyone is a favorite. And this is similar to the men's. I thought the only men's favorite is Wayne Pinnock, but on the women's side, I think it's Hannah Mull of Washington in the pole vault. Her sister is number 2, Amanda Mull, but I think Hannah is the favorite going in. I mean, the only person she has to worry about is Chloe Timberg, but Chloe is in the Eastern region, and she's already beaten Chloe 1-on-1 before, so I think Hannah Mull is the only favorite. I don't want to ignore what Timberg has done, but I think Mull has been dominant longer this season. You have Akeelia Smith of Texas in the long jump. You have her in the triple jump. She is number 1 in both, specifically out of the West region. But Illinois has 4 athletes in the top 7 in the West region in the long jump. My God. Petros is off to it again. I think we forgot how good of a coach he is when it comes to field events, specifically jumps. And I think that that's really he's going to eventually, I think, win a national title at Illinois. I don't think there's any reason for him to go anywhere else. I mean, it's still up in the air why he left Georgia. Never got the full story there. Or why he was released from Georgia. Let's put that out there, especially since he had a national title contending program. But he's clearly moving in the right direction with Illinois. And then when we come east and we look at the jumps, you are expecting Florida to have that 1-2 punch in the long jump. You have Anthea Charlton and Claire Bryant. They are number 1 and number 2. And then you look at the pole vault again, it is Chloe Timberg. But the high jump is where I think is going to be the most flux. In the West, you have Lamar Addison and Rachel Glenn competing. And on the East, you have Elena Kulichenko. And they all just competed against each other at the SEC Championship with Elena coming out top. It wasn't Rachel Glenn. It wasn't Lamar Addison, the 2 co-record holders. It was Elena Kulichenko of Georgia. And I said, in the preview to the SEC, the Conference Championship weekend, you can't ignore Elena Kulichenko. She seems to show up regularly. She performs at a high level at every meet. She's not just a championship performer. She shows up when it's time to compete. Some are really good at championship time because they're either phoning it in or they need the challenge of a conference championship to really kind of get them revved up. She doesn't need that. She simply just seems to just be good at being great. And I think that in the triple jump, you have Eunice Ilyunga of the University of Louisiana Monroe. And then Shante Foreman of Clemson, who I saw in person, really talented triple jumper there. We can't ignore her. She's coming in number two in the region, but I think the stronger region when it comes to triple jump for women will actually be the West, because you have the Texas Tech jumpers with Ruta Lassman, you have Oklahoma State with Winnie B, and then you have San Jose State, you have Texas A&M. I mean, it's Texas with Akeelia Smith. It's a really loaded West region when it comes to the jumps. And then in the heptathlon, I think it is still wide open. I don't think there's a favorite going in. I don't care who the number one ranking is. I understand Jaden O'Brien of Notre Dame is going to be competing, but there's so much flux there. I'm really curious to see who figures out a way to come out on top, especially with all that competition. And then for our fourth leg, we'll look at the team battle. And I think on the women's side, the teams out of the East to make note of will be LSU, Florida. And I'm going to throw in a school in here that perhaps, we may have let slip under the radar. And we've not really given them enough attention, even though they're the best team when it comes to relays right now. Let's not ignore Tennessee. I think Tennessee is going to probably shock some people with their overall point total. And that's without Jason Sears. Just putting that out there. On the West, I think it is between Texas A&M and Arkansas, and I think Arkansas is clearly the top tier team. I don't think you can ignore Texas or USC, but I don't think they're on the level that Arkansas or Texas A&M is at this moment. And it remains to be seen what happens in the team title battle. Because I think that this year it'll be more competitive than it has been in recent years for the team title. Normally, Arkansas sells it up, and they could because they have that depth in the 400. But they're more than just a 400 squad, and we know that. But so is Texas A&M, and so is Florida. I mean, Florida doesn't even really have their short sprinters really competing outside of Grace Stark and the 100 hurdles. The only sprint event they're going to be competing in is the 4x1. They don't have any 200 runners. They don't have any 400 runners. They don't have a 4x4 either. They're going to rely heavily on their distance runners, which, Parker Velby is, they're hoping can give them 20 points. But then you have Flamina Assicle, who's going to be in the 1500, going with Maya Ramsden. So it'll be an interesting team title race. I think it'll be closer than what many people are expecting. I mean, just look at the start list and the heat sheets. I mean, it's clear that it's going to be a technical game for the coaches with the athletes that they have competing in certain events, because there are some instances I feel like they're doing the athlete a disservice because it's very clear they are trying to win a national title, but you can't blame them. But I'm thinking it's an Olympic year. Let's make sure we don't damage any of our athletes. But that is the preview here. I look forward to your feedback, your comments. Please like, share, and subscribe. And we'll chat again come Monday talking about a recap. And we'll have a better, clear picture of who is going to win the national title for the team title race. Thanks for your support.